Okay guys, so for today's video, I wanted to expand on that last video I made about what percentage do PEDs add to your lifts if you are on them for a prolonged period of time. So I kind of made the caveat that this would be, it would be 15 to 20% if you're on them for many years with sustained cycles and you stay on like TRT in between cycles, you're not coming off, because from what I've seen, people who PCT and come fully off, they lose more than the guys who stay on like a low dose of testosterone in between cycles. You just keep a lot more. So that kind of ties into the topic of today's video, which Joseph Rivera asked, and I'll post that. I'll post the question up here. He said basically what or how much of the strength you gain from the PEDs do you feel that you've retained after 5 years off? And it's a really good question because I know it's been addressed before. I know that like Derek has made some videos on it before and kind of gone into it, but it's such an intriguing question because really, who can we think of that's come off and still lifts like pretty intensely? And I'm sure there are people, maybe you guys know people in your everyday life who aren't necessarily more well-known powerlifters who have come off and they might lift, but everything I've seen, what tends to happen is when people come off, they don't lift heavy, they're not pushing the strength after coming off because they come off for various reasons, one of which is injury history and things like that. But I can't really think of notable powerlifters or even bodybuilders for that matter who have come off and continued to push. And correct me if I'm wrong on that. If you guys know of anyone, any notable lifter who was once on PEDs for a while, came off and then kept pushing weights, that would be pretty good anecdotal evidence of for us to see kind of where that's at. But I know for myself, it's been not quite 5 years. So 5 years, like I said, will be November. And typically when I was on PEDs, I was walking around 250 pounds. I've addressed this before. Right now I'm about 205 pounds. That's where I tend to stay now. I just keep my body weight in that range because it helps me run, helps me lift. I can find a good balance there where I can still lift some decent weight, but also run somewhat fast. So that's kind of where I like to stay. So much lighter, 45 pounds. But my honest opinion on this is that I don't really feel I've kept anything in terms of what I had when I was on PEDs. I mean, you can even look at things, I have pictures on my Instagram and such from a physique standpoint of what my physique looked like back then on PEDs to now. And then at the same time, like, if you're not doing a hormone replacement approach as far as TRT, HCG, testosterone, whatever you want to call it, and clomiphene, there's a million methods. You're going from essentially being in this super high state of testosterone where you're always at 1500, 2000, 3000 nanograms per deciliter to now I'm always at like 400 nanograms per deciliter. And I don't think I've checked testosterone in over 6 months. I just stopped checking it because in those 4.5, 5 years since I've come off, I've checked it about a dozen times. And the highest I ever got it was 500 nanograms per deciliter on Fedosia agrestis and Tonkan Ali. And then all the other times it would always be like 420. Like it just, every single time it was like 413, 420, and it just never budged. So it's typically in that 400 range after all these years. And so obviously that's a much lower state, 5 times lower or 4 times lower, whatever you want to call it. So it's much harder to retain a lot of that and everything, you know, that comes with it. And I will say that the more time that goes on that you're completely off, I think this becomes more the case where you're not so much retaining things. And it's really hard to say too, because a lot of my training has switched in a sense from powerlifting, which is more fast twitch muscle fiber utilization, where everything is explosive all the time, to now, since coming off, I've been running for 3 years. Last year I ran like 1,700 miles total. This year I'm on pace for like 2,000 miles. So there's a lot more slow twitch as well, but I'm still lifting. And then I've had these back issues where I haven't been able to push deadlift as much, because the highest my deadlift got coming off was 705 in a meet, and that was in December of 2021. So that's roughly, what is that? That's roughly a year after coming off. And then since then, and I was about 240 pounds at that point. And then I did a 640 deadlift, just missed 661 last September at about 217 pounds. So someone also brought up, and this is a whole nother video, where body weight plays a huge role in things. So again, it's harder to say. But when I was natural, I was pulling 700 pounds. So you see what I'm saying? It's all in the same wheelhouse. And that was at age 19, 20. And I started PEDs at age 20. So I think, you know, the thought process as well is that I could have pushed higher for longer had I not started PEDs when I did. I can't really recall. Bench was about 315, I want to say, before I went on. And then squat was 570 pounds, high bar with no knee sleeves. So the lifts were quite high. And that's why, again, I'm saying it's like I did a 510 squat with bare knee and a belt back in September as well, but that was with low bar. And I've had these back issues which have really complicated things. So just looking at it from my standpoint, I know that Derek has made videos where he says you retain certain aspects of the PEDs and how they influence your performance, how they change I don't know. There's a whole physiology behind it, but I think it's a really tough argument to make because we just don't have examples. And again, I want to hear examples if anyone can think of examples, and there's not a lot of first-hand accounts out there. So just from what I've seen in my almost 5 years off, I don't really feel like I've retained a whole lot. I'm hitting less or the same numbers as I did before I went on anything. And I'm just, the muscle isn't there, like the traps, all that sort of stuff, the thickness through the back, the shape of the muscles, the vascularity, that kind of stuff, that's not something I have anymore. Whereas like I remember, you know, anytime you'd be on heavy PEDs, your traps would blow up, your delts would widen out, you turn way more red, your hematocrit, all that physiology, everything would change. So you're walking around with a 52% hematocrit, now it's like 43%. Just all sorts of different changes like that. So some people might disagree, some people might say it's not fair to compete drug tested once you've been on stuff, and I could totally buy that argument. I totally get your point, comparing it to someone who's been lifetime natural. But this is just my experience and how I feel about it, and whether or not everyone agrees with that, that's fair. And the other thing I want to talk about, what other videos do you guys want me to make? So it's nice to have some video examples, ideas that you guys want me to come up with as far as what you want me to talk about, experiences with things, training advice, things of that nature. I have a few other topics on deck that I will get to, but just let me know as far as that's concerned, and I'm going to try to keep the content coming and just inform everybody as best I can. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks. Subscribe, comment. God bless.